This is theirs, not ours. Correct. Okay.
That's theirs.
Yes.
Not ours. Not good.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Doug Dodd. I'm the chairman of the school board. Today is Monday, August the 6th, 2018. It is 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we have called a special meeting of the Citrus County School Board in order to discuss our school resource officer program. And that is what's on the agenda. If you would like to speak before the board, there are cards in the back for you to fill out. We'll have a chance for citizen comments after we adopt the agenda, and then we'll have a citizen comments prior to the end, or just at the end of the meeting. So the cards are here. If you would just fill those out and bring it up to the assistant to my right. So we start a new month. It's the procedure of the school board to allow each member to have a month for opening exercises, and the month of August is falls upon my opportunity, and so we will have our regularly scheduled meeting on the second Tuesday of the month. But this is August, so what I would like to do is ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, is there a motion to adopt the agenda as recommended by the superintendent?
Move approval?
Second.
All right, motion by Mr. Kennedy, second by Ms. Bryant to approve the adoption of the agenda as recommended by the superintendent. Are there any questions or comments, anything need to be added? We're good to go. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes 5-0. All right, we have a chance for citizen comments, and I have one card at this time, and that is from Cabot McBride. Mr. McBride, if you could come on up to the podium, we'll make sure to get your microphone on. If you just want to fix that up, pull that up to your mouth. And
Can you hear me now?
yes, we can.
Yes, sir. All right. My name is Cabot McBride, and I'm on the Inverness City Council. However, that has nothing to do with my reason for being here today. City Councilman is not my favorite title, but Papa is. And I am here on behalf of Bryson and Brady and Ellie, all three of whom will be in a Citrus County school a week from today. They are among the loves of my life, and as I'm speaking to you today, I'm also speaking on behalf of thousands of parents, grandparents, personnel associated with the school system. You have an awesome job here today, and I hope that collectively we will be able to muster the political will to resolve this matter. It is something that is vitally important. It's not one of those matters that you just kind of brush aside and move on to something else. These are our kids. They're our grandchildren. I'm going to make a comment here that I don't want you to misinterpret. But not being able to resolve this issue is a firing offense. It shows that collectively we cannot work together, and that some people, to be decided, do not belong in their current positions. However, to resolve this matter means that there is credibility, that there is accountability, that there is maturity on the part of all of the people involved in this situation. Ladies and gentlemen, we must get this done. It's that important. I hope that you will take that into account, And everybody who was within earshot of my voice will take that into account so that we can do something that is good for our kids. We can keep them healthy and we can keep them safe and attend absolutely fantastic schools that you all have a direct part in. Thank you. God bless you.
All right, thank you, Mr. McBride. We appreciate the work you do as an elected city councilman. So thank you, but thank you for coming here today to speak to us from a different role. We appreciate your comments. Is there anyone else that would like to approach the boards? Any other public comments? Okay. Seeing none, we're going to move into our agenda item number 3, school support services, Mr. Bishop. And we have A is the approval of the agreement between the school board and the sheriff's office for school resource officers. Okay, Mr. Bradshaw?
Excuse me, what I handed to you just a minute ago was a copy of the contract that was emailed to me close to noon today by Mr. Batzel, who represents the sheriff's office. As you know from the discussions at our last meeting, there was 2 issues that the school district and the county were having with the sheriff's office. The first one was because the school district is putting up so much money, the sheriff's office is putting up so much money, that if any additional monies were received from other sources, that the amount that we are spending and the amount that the county was spending would be reduced proportionally. We went through a lot of different negotiations and discussions and on how to make that fair or work with that. I will let the copy of the contract that was just handed to me has that paragraph completely deleted out of it. So, which basically says that if any additional monies that came into another agency besides the school district would not get reduced proportionately. I don't believe that's the county's position on that, although Ms. Lynn and Mr. Oliver are here and can discuss that. But that is apparently what the sheriff's position is at this point in time. He has been, we've been arguing over the term of any other source as far as whether other sources outside of Senate Bill 7026 would be appropriate to come back into the pot and be distributed between the county and the school district. So that was number 1. Number 2 is there was an auditing requirement. I shouldn't use the term audit because I think that conjures up negative connotations. It was more of a financial reporting requirement on where monies were coming in and monies were going out. And in the contract that was given to me just shortly ago, all of that has been removed as far as our current budget year and the sheriff's current budget year. Or I guess his budget year will start on October 1 of 18 and then roll around to September 30th of 2019. And in that year, he has agreed to provide quarterly revenue expense reports to the county and the school district produced by accounting software used by the sheriff. So any financial let me back up. The sheriff has to be audited once a year pursuant to statute in 6 different categories. The contract would require some financial accountability or disclosure in regards only to this contract. All of that has now been removed by the sheriff's department. And so there would not be a mechanism to say where did this money go, where were the expense reports as far as this year is concerned.
And that's something that they worked out with the county? Is that acceptable?
I have no idea. I just got this. I think Mr. Batzel, and Mr. Batzel is here, who represents the sheriff's office. I think he emailed this to me about 11:45 or something like that, and I haven't had a good opportunity to speak with Ms. Lynn. I did talk to her on the phone a little bit ago, but I don't know if she's had a chance to talk to anybody else. It concerns me in the sense that it has almost gone all the way back to where we started off when we were negotiating these 2 points 4 or 5 weeks ago. Starting at 0.
I don't want to be presumptuous. You want to let me know?
Yeah, just go ahead and see. We'll get to you here in just a minute. I appreciate you being here. I know Denise Lynn is here from the county attorney. We thank you for coming, as well as Mr. Oliver, county administrator, is here, and I'm sure If there is any comments that you'd like to make, or if you agree to, we may ask you to come to the podium for discussion. I see the sheriff is not able to be here, and Mr. Kitchen, I don't believe, is here either. But we will continue on. Mr. Bradshaw, so the contract that you're presenting to the board right now is what you received from the sheriff's office, but not with the presumption that it was approved at the county also, is that right?
Or I have not had an opportunity to discuss this with the superintendent. I just gave you what I just got. I'm not telling you that I even support it.
Okay,
Because
so the
I think
proportionate
that-
share,
I think that taking out the proportionate share paragraph is not something that this board at our last meeting said that y'all wanted that to remain in there, that with the proportionate share language, that monies that came in. This has the potential, like if the Guardian Program money, which is part of Senate Bill 7026, and that money was redirected to the sheriff and not to the school district, the sheriff would get to keep that over and above the budgeted money that we have in the contract. Or monies from other sources that would come in with the additional monies that the sheriff would have for the SRO program. That was the purpose of putting the proportionate share language in there, was so that if those monies came in, because the sheriff came forward and said, it's going to cost $2.5 million for me to do this job. We put in, basically 1.2 million, and the county 1.3 million, roughly right there, and said, if any money's come back in, we should get to reduce the costs that we had, because when we gave all of our safe school money plus went into our general fund, to do that. So I think that was the rationale behind, that we should get some of these monies back if there's additional monies that are allocated by the state.
okay, so the sheriff has removed the proportionate share part of it.
Correct.
And he's also removed you said not to use the word audit, but what was your perception of that as far as what they removed with
Well,
the accountability?
If you want, I can read what the last contract said on both of those sections. They're not.
There's quite a few people watching today, and if we could speak into our microphones today in particular, it's very important because they're not able to hear that. So I apologize for interrupting the meeting, but I do think that it's important for the public to hear that.
Actually, I turned on today.
It was a general comment that was shared.
So, the proportionate share contract language said that the parties agreed that any additional allocation from the state from Senate Bill 7026 or from any other source for school resource officers made to the sheriff, the school district, and the county shall be applied to reduce the county's and the school district's proportionate contribution under this agreement. Any additional allocation received by any party shall be sent to the county for distribution as stated above. So that whole paragraph has now been removed. And then the accounting and auditing, in a nutshell, said that the last agreement, I think this was Ms. Lynn's language, agreed that funds paid pursuant are restricted for the payment of expenses related to the SRO program, and the sheriff will provide detailed quarterly revenue and expense reports and reserve balance reports for the funds paid pursuant to this agreement to the county and the school district. These reports shall encompass the restricted funds paid pursuant to the agreement. The provision allows for the SRO funds to be audited, but in no event shall such audit occur more frequently than once per year. And that has been changed to what is now in the contract that was sent by the sheriff.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Bradshaw?
I have one. If the prorated proportionate share has been removed, is there anything else? Because we haven't seen this contract either, and I'm not really prepared to vote on something I haven't read. But is there any other language in this contract that we need to look for regarding any future payments from the state?
No, that was the paragraph that covered that. The rest of it is how much money that the school district was going to contribute, how much money the county was going to contribute, payment dates, and then obligations that the sheriff had as far as number of officers, the guts of the SRO program was in there. Those are the main funding portions.
Okay. So if there is future money, then we enter into new discussions. There's nothing about future money in this contract.
No, ma'am, what it is that we would not enter into future discussions. The way that it's written right now, if you want to strictly interpret it, I haven't had a chance to talk to the county if they would even agree to this, would be that if by chance the legislature said, you know, we're gonna redirect some of this Guardian money, and we're gonna give the school district, you know, $500,000. We would get it, the county would not get any reimbursement for the monies that they are given. If it went to the sheriff's office, then the sheriff would keep that money, and we would not get it. So there was not a provision in here to split those monies up. Am I making, am I clear?
As it stands now, if I recall, the Guardian money was to be directed towards those that would be training. And that, in a case such as ours, that would have been the sheriff. So potentially, if those monies were reverted to the original intended payees, that would be then the sheriff that would receive those. If the legislature or committee decided we're going to make those safe school monies, if for some magic purpose, that would come to us as the school district.
Right.
There's nothing to then permit for the county to have any means of recouping any of their costs associated with helping fund the school district at this time for the SRO program.
Correct.
Okay.
So if the state decided to give the money back to the local districts for the school resource officer program, that would come to the school board then. If, I mean, there's a possibility it could come to the school board. And then we would keep 100% of that, is that what the sheriff is agreeing to?
If it works that way, yes. But then I don't know what the county's position would be if they would fund any amount of money if they don't get somebody, you know, some money back, if more money's come in for state school officers.
See, I would much rather share the money if we get money from the state back for school resource officers. I'd much rather agree to share that money. I mean, I don't know how the board feels about it.
I thought that's what we agreed at the last meeting.
Here's what we agreed.
But yet the sheriff does not want, if he gets the money, he doesn't want to share that back with the school district. Is that right? And maybe this would be a good time for Mr. Batson to come to.
Rob Batsell, General Counsel for the Citrus County Sheriff's Office. I appreciate your time today. You're correct. So this is not a conversation about whether we're going to share, whether this is going to go to the SRO program or be diverted elsewhere. That is not at all the intent of the striking of this language. Your sheriff wants to, well, and let me back up a little bit and quell some concerns for those who may be watching or those in the crowd. The sheriff is going to be in your schools next Monday, keeping every school in Citrus County safe, whether we have an agreement or not. That hurts my bargaining position, but I just want to tell you that to calm concerns. He will be there, and his men and women will be there protecting your schools. So just to get that off the table. And frankly, I don't think we're here to talk about whether the school board is going to open a police department in a week and try to address the threat that we all learned is there after watching what happened in Parkland. I don't think we're here to talk about that today either. I think we're here to talk about two fairly insignificant issues in light of the bigger issues that we're trying to address by keeping these schools safe, and we're all partners on that, the sheriff included.
Mr. Batson, I just want to interrupt you for a minute because I know in your opinion we're not here for that, but it is on the agenda. So it is a topic item that we can discuss. So make sure everyone knows that it is an agenda item and it will be discussed. Now, I hope we can solve this so we don't have to get to that point.
Yeah, no, and hopefully we can have a good discussion
Right.
as partners who are going to be partners for a long time.
I agree.
And so here's what, there are two particular issues that we're here to address. One is 4D, and what happens if money, quote unquote, from other sources comes in to Citrus County. And the sheriffs and your staff and staff at the county have been hard at work and eliminated almost all of the issues associated with getting us across the finish line. So we're extremely close. But this language, the reason it's a problem is not because if they open up the Guardian money, one of us is going to be the winner and the others are going to be the losers. If the legislature does that, then the funding mechanism, the appropriation through which they do it, will determine how exactly whoever receives it has to spend it. Just like any other state money any of us get. And by the way, the sheriff doesn't receive direct appropriations from the legislature. So one of y'all is going to potentially be the winner in a win-lose scenario. That is not at all the issue. The issue is this: your sheriff understands that you answer to taxpayers and that the county answers to taxpayers, and that they do not, none of us want to put additional burden on the back of those taxpayers without the need to do so. So we've trimmed down this budget and worked through since February and March when the legislation was passed to trim it down to provide fewer services than the sheriff would provide in a perfect world.
I don't think you've answered the question.
Okay,
Why he doesn't want
because-
this in the contract, because if you're saying it's to protect taxpayers, so to have some undue burden, I'm trying to understand that tracking at all.
We've
So
provided
please
you,
help us.
we've provided you with a budget based upon the means you have. The sheriff intends to seek private donations and grant money from outside of Citrus County to supplement the services provided to Citrus County Public Schools. If there's an agreement in this contract that we have to turn over that money directly back to the county or the school board, a private donor is not going to give the money because it's going to go back in the pot to pave a road. Or the grant, we would be in breach of the terms of the grant and would not be a proper applicant for such a grant. So the sheriff wants to be entrepreneurial and provide a higher level of service than the taxpayers in the county can provide.
So this is new information.
Yes, sir.
This is new information for the first time in all of our contracting negotiations, in all of our conversations. This is the first time that those comments that I believe have been shared with this board, that there is some effort to seek additional monies, fundraising or otherwise, to offset the costs of the school SRO program. It would think that the very entity that is charged with the protection of those students, which is also the school board, should have been involved in some of those conversations and planning.
Okay, well, I'm telling you today, I apologize if it wasn't. Here's what I think that this is going to be, when what happened in Parkland happened in February. Citrus County can be very proud of the fact that it was one of the first, it has one of the lengthiest histories providing an SRO program in the country. I mean, it's phenomenal. So we had a great head start thanks to those who have sat here before us. But when that happened and the legislature responded, everything that was normal was turned on its head. And so I think that we're going to encounter several instances over the course of the next year or so as we're figuring this out, where we say, hey, we can do this more efficiently, or maybe we need an extra man in uniform, woman in uniform here or there, or you know, I think we're going to need to tweak this. So while I apologize if I could have provided you with that information sooner, and I do understand your concern completely, it's well-founded, I think we're going to have some skin knees in the process of trying to figure this out.
So you're saying, though, what we should do then is not have any controls as a school district over any of the monies that could be raised in the name of our students?
No, certainly not.
But there'd be there's no mechanism for that money to have any say other than we're going to raise money for the SRO program, and we would have no controls whatsoever because that money wouldn't flow towards us. What you're saying is it would flow directly to the sheriff.
No, I'm not. No, sir. No.
Then where would it go?
So if you go have a fundraiser, if you have a fundraiser, or if a grant, if a public education foundation statewide says we're going to provide this grant process for school boards to go apply for a grant for SRO program supplementation for better services, and you go do that, then you are going to then be able to say, okay, we just got this grant money. Hey, sheriff, you know, and you as a board, we're taking a risk too. You would determine whether you want it to go to hardening or an extra officer or whatever the case may be. I'm just saying that we're not just going to split it up two ways and return it to the coffers of the two parties paying for the SRO program.
Now we're talking about hardening. I'm
No,
confused.
because I mean, what we're saying is whoever goes out there with and puts the sweat and staff power into trying to bring in resources to Citrus County for the SRO program, they can spend it in whatever way they see fit toward the SRO program. So
then if the allocation comes down, there's no sweat involved with that. If an allocation comes down from the state for SRO monies, and that comes to the school board, then what the sheriff's proposal is, we could just defray our costs completely. We're not doing anything different. It's still the same SRO program. It's just going to be our savings. Is that what I'm hearing?
So we're talking a little bit hypotheticals, but I'm with you. I think that, for one, through this contract, we'll still have the obligation. We're going to have the obligation to do what we say we're going to do to protect schools. You're going to have the obligation to pay the sum certain that's in the contract.
Right.
If more money comes in that you get, This contract now does not speak to that. So one of two things is going to occur. You can either spend it as you see fit,
Okay.
or you're going to have to do it, you're going to have to spend it in a way consistent with the appropriation and whatever enabling legislation comes down and provides it to you. There will probably, the state doesn't give away money without restriction, so I would presume there would be some restriction on it.
Well, why don't we just add in the contract then, there will be a proportionate share, an equitable share from what we're paying and what the sheriff or the county's paying, then we can decide it right now. I'm ready to do that. I think, is the board ready to do that? That we're willing to take a proportionate share. Now, I'll even go as far to say if the sheriff has a private foundation grant or somebody in the community privately that wants to donate money to the SRO program, I don't think that affects our finances, does it? I mean, that would be up to the sheriff and the county and how that money comes in. So for at least, could the sheriff at least in dealing with us, agree to the proportionate share, an equitable share? So that if the legislature were to come down and fund more money, that we would agree up front. Because you just said that there's nothing in the contract. Why not have something? We agree now, we agree up front that we'll take the percentage that we're paying, the sheriff takes the percentage that he's paying, or the county's paying. Isn't that fair?
I think that action would effectively kill any attempt to go get such a private grant or a donation, or I don't know what the Guardian program type funds how that would come down. Frankly, I don't think any of us do. But on the private side, I can take that back to my sheriff, but we'll have to look that over. I don't know that he's going to be agreeable to that. I mean, look, this is.
Why would it kill the
Well, because if there's a foundation, like I mentioned a moment ago, that has a grant available for things like this, for the SRO program and supplementing what we're doing, we can in good faith apply for a grant to say, here's what we want to do. We want to add, A, B, or C, or these enhanced services, if we know that we have to turn around and pay the money back to the county and the school board because we've agreed to do so in the
Well,
contract.
couldn't we put that wording in the contract though? That would be clear then, that if it's not public money, if it's private money, that would be, acceptable. I do agree that grants take a lot of work.
So
I
private,
haven't seen a lot of grants that are out there right now for SROs. Do you all know of some that are out there for
No,
school resource officers?
I don't believe so.
Is there a grant you're looking to apply for, like a large sum of money that you know about right now?
No, not yet. But,
So
there's just through the Florida Sheriff's Association and such, there's discussion of organizations being interested in helping and trying to create these types of grants. And so we wouldn't want to close that door.
So isn't that a way we could word that, Mr. Bradshaw, in the contract that they could? Oh yeah, go ahead, Ms. Hill.
My only question about the private, or the grant money, is if the sheriff goes out and applies for a grant with a private donor, and he is able to obtain those dollars, he is still sold it to the private sector and grant on behalf of our kids. And we're the ones that have paid for the program, the county's paying for the program, so I'm a little confused on why private sector wouldn't donate money if they thought that the school district was gonna receive some of those funds to help fund the SRO program. Or what, yeah, because there may be grants out there that we go get to offset some of it, but, we haven't, like Mr. Dodger said, we haven't seen all of those grants come through. So I don't know that I agree that private sector would not donate based on our kids, the safety of our kids in our schools, and that we're the ones funding it along with the county.
We have an educational foundation that's design purpose is to accept funds to go back into the school district.
So with this language in the agreement, you would be in the position of sitting before that donor or grant provider and applying for a grant or asking for a donation and telling them that 50% of what they give you is going to go back to the county.
No, that's what I just said. We'll put the wording in there that if it's a private grant that's written, then I don't have a problem with us not having the money. I don't think we want proportionate share of a private grant. Now, I know Ms. Himmel was alluding to the fact that they're doing it in the name of the school board, but that could be easily inserted.
And the county can speak to this, but I was under the impression from something that I'd read that the county was open to that type of arrangement with regards to private donations or something of that nature. So that's why, to me, it comes back to, if the sheriff doesn't get funded other than through the county and the school board, and both entities are having to go into their general funds in order to fund the sheriff's plan for the SROs, then any additional funding, I would think it would be just equitable and appropriate, especially to the taxpayers, for that to flow back to those entities that are funding it. And I think that's where we've been all along, is to say, we have valued that unlike other districts, our county commission has come forward and said, we're going to continue to believe in this program. We're trying to say, we appreciate that, and we understand that both of us are having to, we're going into our fund balance very significantly. We are at a statutorial edge right now on our fund balance in order to appropriately fund the sheriff's desires. And that's where we've been at. So the question is, when we're going to have to make tough decisions behind the scenes, if there is any shot of money coming back, why wouldn't that equitably flow back to the taxpayers to offset the taxpayers' desires for each of our government agencies?
So you touched on something that I think is important for all of us to keep in mind, because I don't want, shouldn't be adversarial one bit. The legislature has created, in response to a significant tragedy, a bar that is really hard for all of us to meet, right? I mean, this is a community effort, and I know the stress you're under financially to fund it. Same applies for the county. Thankfully, they're at the table, you're right, and the sheriff wants to do it right. What we have funded is not, I would take issue with characterizing it as the sheriff's desires. I mean, we started by talking with about 12 additional officers. It was trimmed down to 9, and we added 2 schools in the process. And so he is, promising to you that he's going to keep those schools safely, but this is, as he likes to call it, the diet plate. And if he can go back and go outside of the county and find grant money or find private donations, those will come in and only supplement the services you're providing. And so and the safety of our schools. And so the only thing this accomplishes, and I'm on board with Mr. Dodds, I can take that recommendation back and see if that's,
What is the
where
diet
it's going.
plate? What does that mean? I'm not sure I understand that.
Well, we went from 12 officers to 9 and added 2 schools in the process. And so I'm just suggesting that he understands the limitations of funding that were communicated to him early on in this process, both by the school board and the county. And so he has provided a plan that fits the budget that was,
Well,
the
let me ask you about the
limitations that were
plan,
discussed.
because I'm a little surprised at the contract. I mean, what is presented here is 2.5 million. Now, that's where we started. When you say we already wound down through everything, he cut $216,963 because we agreed to the lease of the cars, and that was agreement on us jumping up from less than $1 million to 1.1 million. So, that's not the right figure that we agreed to. It's not 2.5 million, it should be about 2.3 million. There's a $200,000 savings in there for the lease of the cars. And that's what got us on board to go to the 1.1 million, so that we can be more on an even keel with the county. So to me, it's kind of just probably just an error, just an oversight, you think?
Well,
And I
I
have the
would think-
numbers from last year when we talking about what we've increased. I think we had 16, including the supervisors, last year. And the contract last year for the SRO program was $367,469. So you can say that we've added the Crest School, the Withlacoochee School, and Environmental Academy. But we're going with 25, and now we've gone for the school share 1.11.
Okay.
And so I'm saying you've gone from, if you just divide by the number of people that we've done, we've gone from $24,497 per deputy or supervisor to now $44,403.20 per person. So I don't want to hear about the numbers that we had or we've increased, because we've also increased more than proportionately the people that we're getting in the board.
Okay, well, I will just say this to Mr. Kennedy. A minute ago, you raised a concern that fairly that I was bringing something to you new that you hadn't heard before. This contract has changed in a lot of ways in the last 2 months since Wes and Denise have been working with me and we've been back and forth. One thing that has never been raised or never been an issue is the numbers and the amount. That was settled before it got to us. We're just the lawyers. That's never, if it's an issue, I'll go back and ask about it. It's never been.
It's not an issue with us because we've agreed to the 1.1 million, but when we agreed to the 1.1 million, the reasoning behind it was to make it more of an equal share with the county. And that was what was told to us by the sheriff on the lease of the vehicles. And you can go back and listen to the meeting that we had and listen to what we voted on, and that's what we agreed to. So when I see this in here now, and again, that's, I mean, we're at 1.1 million, and the county has to deal with the other side with what they're gonna fund the sheriff's budget on. So I just thought it was just an oversight. Mrs. Himmel.
I just want to address the diet plate, because I've heard that, and I was a little confused, like you all were, about the diet plate. When we agreed to this contract between us and the board members and back to the sheriff's office, it needs to be clear to the public that includes 22 officers, which means there'll be one SRO on every campus. So I don't know why that's called a diet plate. That also includes 3 sergeants on top of the SROs. Now, I've spoken to many superintendents and school board members across the state. They don't fund the sergeants and the relief and all of those other things. We've agreed to do that at the last meeting, whatever month that was in. So I don't know with the $2.5 million, and the sheriff was here that day and said that if we gave him that 1.10 or whatever that is, that he could move forward with the plan. Nothing was mentioned about a diet plan because all our requirements are 1 officer per campus. So I don't know where the diet piece comes, and I've been on a lot of them. However, that really means you've cut back everything, and I don't see where it's been cut back because, and I don't see, and I guess my question about, I don't know why everybody's afraid to share the money because I don't know what money he needs to enhance the program. If we've already got an officer on every campus, we've got 3 sergeants that oversee 7 deputies, 1 per deputy or sergeant. I don't know, and I guess my question to the sheriff is the $2.5 million not enough money to keep our kids safe when they're on campus? I know that's not you.
No, yeah, but I can tell you, I mean, he is going to make sure the kids are safe on campus. Okay, I want to take that off the table. That's not going to be compromised.
Let me tell you why
but the extent,
it's safe. And what we can discuss money, we can discuss arsenals and lock safes in their offices and their high-speed chases. But what's kept this county safe, as far as I'm concerned, is the relationship that these officers have had with our children on campus. When we first started months ago on this contract, I mentioned Jimmy Wilson over at Crystal River High School because I had him as a sophomore. He's now an SRO over there. He has kids that come up and tell him everything that they know that's going on in this community. I said something, and Casey Phillips made the newspaper, but I said Casey Phillips leaves rock crusher every day with slobber all over his kneecaps. So what's kept our kids safe in Citrus County since 1984-85 with this SRO program is the relationship and these men that go into our schools and develop a relationship with our kids of trust, and those kids trust them enough to tell them everything they know on the community. So I don't want us to, as a community, to ever miss that point of what this SRO program has done to keep our kids safe. I hate to see it reduced to the money.
no, well said.
Because it's all about the people. And I'm tired of it being reduced to money, and Mr. McBride, I love your wife and your grandchildren, and they will have somebody in that school on Monday. But I also have a problem with you saying that they're going to be in our schools on Monday, because I still have a problem with putting the 5 in back in March, and for the 46 days they were there, we got a school bill for $96,359.59. That was about $418 a day for those 5 guys. And so I'm a little bit reluctant for you to stand before this community and say that you will have deputy sheriffs in our school on Monday and then get another $100,000 bill.
I talked with my daughter, who's the principal at Homosassa, about SROs. She loves her SROs. he goes down the slide with the kindergartners. He's all over the school. He's just an awesome, awesome leader. And she loves him. He's great. I second everything you said.
Oh yeah, well said. And that's not, look, those are the important things, right? You're right. We're here to iron out a couple of issues.
We're gonna iron them out
Yeah,
today.
we're gonna iron them out. But you're right. That grounds us all. But that's what's important.
It gets lost in the conversation, and the community needs to know that this board totally appreciates every SRO officer in our schools. And we're sorry that they're having to go through this bickering.
So, you know, every day, my wife teaches in the schools too. And my daughter is in those schools. They're on the front lines of what happens. So when you say to us that you're going to be there, by God, you are going to be there, because somebody's going to be protecting our families and our kids. That's what we expect. That's what this community expects. What's been difficult is we as a board have tried every step to meet the sheriff's needs, financially and in every way. We have had conversation both here and behind the scenes. How can we make this work? And now we're at a situation where we don't even know if the money's going to be there, if there's some magic money that's going to come down. But what you're saying is you can't agree to a contract of money we don't even know that exists. That's hard at this point. That is very hard for this community, and for us to go back to our families and say, no, we don't know what it's going to be. We don't know who's going to be there. We're going to have somebody there, but we don't know who it is. Why? Did you not pay them? Did you not give them enough money? No, we did that. The question now is, there might be some money, and that's where we're at as a problem. There might be some money, and that's what's holding us up right now. That's just not acceptable.
Well, I think what the question of whether it's going to hold us up is your decision, and I think
No,
you're right. I think
already discussed
I think it
this.
is a minor issue when you're talking about a pot of money that probably won't be there, and no one knows if it really will or not. Then why are we micromanaging and
No, we
contracting
have,
for the
all the other boards have agreed. We have all agreed. The only one now that has said, I won't accept that, is the Sheriff's Department. We have all said, yes, we're good with that. The county seems to have agreed to that. This board has affirmed that. In fact, at the last board meeting, our attorney asked us twice to affirm the position of this board on that issue. They went back to you. So, no, sir, I would disagree that we have all agreed. We are not holding this up now.
We're waiting on your agreement, and you need to say something, or the sheriff needs to say something. And I want to also say something about what my fellow board members said. This is all about the children and the safety of the children, and I really resent it when it's turned into a money situation and where it's projected to the public that this is just the money situation. It is about the safety and the well-being and the health of the children. That's what this board is about.
Yes, ma'am. This is not a money situation. This is not a money. Let me clarify that, if I can, because that's an important distinction. This is not a grab over who gets additional money if it comes in. And for the practical purposes, it is not going to be the sheriff, except for him applying for, trying to talk with donors about needing enhanced services or apply for grants. It's going to be you or the county. I mean, the legislature.
Why won't he agree to it? Why? I mean, we've all agreed to it. You're saying he will not agree to that. I'll have to go have another conversation.
It's going to slam the door on the efforts that he can't. He has
on money that we don't know even exists.
Well, I will tell you. I think I can share this with you. It's not a huge one, but he has a pretty significant donation to the tune of about $10,000. $10,000. Now, with this, it's just from a private donor, so it's not. I know that's small potatoes in the scope of these things, but that's not going to come in, and that we're not even under contract yet. But that's just from being out in the community and talking to people about what we're facing here in the wake of.
We're not here because of
no,
a
we're
potential
not.
donation of $10,000.
No, but we're on the precipice of a long-term partnership, and all of the door on all of the donations like that is closed.
Has the 20 years that we've been here not been a partnership? You have SRO number 1 here that was in this county. SRO number 3, This entire school district is filled with family members that are SROs and that built this program. I think we've been in partnership. We never realized we were out of partnership.
Understood, no, we're in partnership. I'm just saying, this is the,
You said we're on the cusp of it.
no, things are different, sir, with all due respect. I mean, everything changed in February. And with the legislation that passed.
We've been
Everything
asking
is
for
different.
money to come to a one-to-one for SROs for at least, I know, 8 years or more than I've been on this board. So that may have been something that changed for some people, but it wasn't new to us.
And I understand the difficult circumstances, but now it's a mandate, and now we're trying to figure it out. And so I didn't mean that this is a new partnership, but it's a whole lot different than it was. I mean, in terms of
It is a lot
the numbers and the
It
details.
is a lot
Now,
different.
I didn't come here to talk about money because, like I said, for the last 2 months negotiating this contract, money was never an issue. The money was there, but the money never changed.
I thought that was the issue with the county, was the money, was accounting for the money. Is that one of the issues?
Wes and I have been, and Denise have been talking for better part of, I guess, since
Isn't
like
that the
mid-May.
money, though?
May's never been an issue. Money's never been an issue.
The accounting for the money's been the issue, is that?
Oh, well, now that's the next, are we done with the?
No, we're not. No, we have Ms. Bryant and then we have Ms. Counts. But when you say money's not the issue, it hasn't been an issue for our board, because we've stepped forward every time.
Oh, yeah.
And to come up with the 1.1 million, but we still don't have a contract. So that's why we're having the meeting today.
Yes.
And so that, and then, so, even now, and I agree with Ms. Counts, I mean, even if, we just got this, just first eyes on this contract, which again, unfortunate that it's taken that long, but, we're dealing with it here. We're at least getting some of these things out in the view of the public, which is a good thing. But what we want to do is have a contract that I was hoping that we'd sign today and that would go before the county tomorrow. And they said that they had a room on their agenda. If they have to add it, they would add it. It sounds to me like that's not going to happen. Now, we're still working on this, so maybe if you can have the approval of the sheriff, if we need to take a recess for you to go call the sheriff and say this is where we are, you can come back in here and we can agree to something, and then you can take it to the county, and hopefully that they'll agree to it also. That would be my hope, Ms. Bryant.
I agree with all of my colleagues, and particularly what Mr. Dodd had to say about private money and public money. If public money comes in, we need to share it. If private money comes in to either side, it's whoever went and got it, whoever wrote the grant. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
And we don't want any of it, ever. we don't want any strings, no. And if we can't put that on this contract, the difference between public money and private money, just an addendum to your
No, well,
contract.
Wes and I have had these discussions at length, and I'm.
Really?
No, it's not that he's not, if he reported to you every time he talked to me, y'all would fire him tomorrow. We talk too much. No offense, it's been very professional and great, but we've talked about all these things.
Well,
And I can take
why
that.
isn't that in the contract? Public money versus private money.
I have written that down, I did a moment ago, and I can take that back to my sheriff. I can't commit anything as I stand it right now, I'm sorry, that's just what I have to tell you. And we can take a recess, why don't we go to, whenever we're done.
It's
That's
okay.
what I'm gonna suggest, because we just got the contract and I really would like to read through it. But I will tell you, my position is, right along with Mr. Cabot. This school board will have coverage on Monday in all of our schools.
That's why I started with that.
And
yes,
it
ma'am.
may or may not be a deputy sheriff. And we're gonna decide on this contract today, because we were at months, then we were at 1 month, and now we're down to 7 days. Last week we were at 14 days, now we're down to 7 days. And this board is gonna take the responsibility of keeping our kids safe. There will be somebody in those schools on Monday.
Okay, we've covered proportionate share, so it sounds like you can call the sheriff, and, that seems pretty basic. I don't think there'd be any problem with that. I hope there's not, but we still have to cover the accountability, so that's the second thing
Yes.
in the contract that you have removed, or the sheriff had removed, is that right?
That's, no, not removed it, no, modified it. And here's the thing,
Okay.
so the timeline of how this was worked out, Wes and I worked on this contract for the better part of a month. And on July 10th, I've got an email from Wes saying, all right, I think we've landed this plane, here's the draft. And we both got calls that day that the county wanted to be a party to the agreement, which is totally appropriate, that's fine. So we started down a road of negotiating with the county. And so this is both of these clauses, by the way, that we're here to talk about today, were not in the agreement prior to that day, that agreement that was sent to me on July 11th. So, and that's not, I'm not throwing the county under the bus by saying that. I just want to point out that those were not issues that were on our radar. Now, this audit issue particularly, this accounting and audit issue, this is more of a, I would characterize as an issue between the sheriff and the county. Now, maybe if it's important to you, then that's,
No.
Fine.
So let me tell you what I've done, and just so you understand. The new language, which is on page 16, paragraph 9, it's largely, I'll be clear, Denise, so I don't mischaracterize it. It's her language, which I have modified and at some point stricken the language which was formerly the last paragraph sentence that allows for an audit. But we are agreeing, basically, beginning up, right now we're in obviously late budget season. So there is not currently a department or cost center set up in the sheriff's budget through the county, specifically set up for the SRO program. There just never has been. We agree earlier in paragraph 4 of this agreement that we will, beginning next budget year, set this up as a separate department and cost center. Once that's done, it's very easy. Right now it's very difficult to generate the reports that they're asking for. Once it's set up as a separate department or cost center, not an issue at all. This is not a transparency issue. This is a how many members of staff are going to be running numbers constantly issue. Okay? So what we've agreed to do is what they're asking beginning October 1, 2019. Now, what I didn't put in here, and I know we all know this, we all have our own separate auditing requirements. The sheriff is a constitutional officer, and the legislature has determined what is reasonable and necessary when it comes to auditing constitutional officers. He goes through an annual audit. I don't know if everybody is in agreement on this, but at least the legislature and the state believe that what's set up statutorily to audit sheriffs is the right way to do it. So his concern was with additional heightened audits and really bureaucracy, as he calls it, and just before the system is set up so that we're in a different department or cost center, you can't just click generate on a report. Beginning in 2019, completely happy to do that. Now, Wes would appropriately point out that this agreement is a one-year agreement and October 19 is beyond the scope of this agreement. We're just putting it here to give you and anyone else assurance that we're on board with doing that when it's set up appropriately in the budget process. So that's why I'm not trying, this is not a transparency issue. The sheriff is audited, just like you all are and everyone else is. Every other constitutional officer in the state. Not trying to shirk that responsibility.
And the reason you can't, it's 19, tell me, because I was just, when I first read it, I thought that's a typo, it's October 1, 2018.
I've been equally confused, so I understand.
Yeah, so just explain that to me one more time so I know, because I agree, we've already agreed to transparency with all of our figures. It's between the sheriff and the county, and if the county's going to be acceptable to their part of the contract to, allow the sheriff to have his accounting procedures, whatever that is, as far as I'm concerned, that's between him and the county. The problem is, if the county says, no deal, it affects us, right?
Yes.
I mean, because then we're jammed up again.
You're right.
And so that's why I'm so glad that Mr. Oliver and Ms. Linda are here, so that maybe when they go back to their boards tomorrow, they can explain that this is where we all stand. So just, again, the 2019 is because it takes time to get a software for accounting into place, is that?
So no, sir. So the budget cycle, I believe, begins in May. Is that correct? May, and the final budget is not. The budget process goes through, of course, the summer, and then the final budget is passed in October. The current budget in its form for the sheriff's office does not include a department or cost center for the SRO program. So until it includes a separate, broken out cost center, and I'm talking budget, and I'm a lawyer, so please forgive me. But once that is done, and in the next year budget, it's provided for, those reports that they're requesting, which are essentially revenue and expense reports, can be produced quarterly as they're requesting. So we've agreed to do it as soon as we can in October in 2019. And Ms. Lynn received it this morning too, with that attempt to find a middle ground. And so I'm trying to thread a needle here and provide a middle ground that makes the county happy, but I'm told that we can't really do it without a whole lot of unnecessary overhead and time with staff producing these reports. And we don't think it's reasonable to undergo a whole additional audit when we're already subject to an annual audit.
When the sheriff's office is audited, is it through the Auditor General's office, that annual audit?
The county has the auditing.
Like the clerk's office?
Yes, ma'am. So the county just, I think recently, in the last few weeks, approved an extension of the contract with the auditor who audits all the constitutional officers. So presumably they're happy with the auditor who's performing these audits.
I just asked because I think we're audited about 5 or 6 times a year.
Yeah, I represent a college, and I understand that.
Then you know.
The college in Florida.
Okay,
yeah.
and I want to give Ms. Lynn the opportunity to come forward,
Absolutely.
but before that, Mr. Batson, we just want to, I'll offer the board, are there any other questions for the sheriff's attorney, anything else, or Mr.
I just
Bradshaw?
want to know, is it going to be an
No,
attempt,
not this.
is it going to be an attempt to give this information back to you, to give the sheriff, have the sheriff redo the contract and
He's
work
gonna
with that
call him as
today?
soon as we recess.
But is there an attempt to be able to finish this up today with all that input?
Yes, that's our goal.
Mhm.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
You might want to wait till you call the sheriff till we find out what Ms. Lynn has. to say.
Will do. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lynn, thank you for coming today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Denise Lynn, I'm the Citrus County Attorney, and I'm here today at the request of our chairman, Ron Kitchen. He did receive an invitation to be here today by Chairman Dodd, and where the county is at with this agreement is the county commissioners have never seen this agreement. This agreement has been hashed out with the 3 lawyers, as we say, and we actually haven't presented it to the Board of County Commissioners. So Chairman Kitchen was he just felt it would be a better idea to have staff come here because he can't speak on behalf of the whole board at this point because the whole board hasn't looked at it. So he did want me to pass on to you that he appreciated the invitation and would have been here, but thought it was better to have Mr. Oliver and myself here, and especially because we had been working on it. So I just want to start out by saying ever since this mandate came down from the legislature, the Board of County Commissioners has stood together with you. You all remember we had a joint meeting, and the commissioners have pledged their support on a number of different levels. And I wanted to start out by, first of all, the commissioners have already appropriated $87,000 to the sheriff from the current 17-18 fiscal year to the sheriff for this program. They've also pledged in the current budget, for the school year, as you all are just your budget year, which starts July 1st through September 30th. They've also pledged that in this contract they would pay another $348,000 from the current. They would do a budget amendment to cover that for this fiscal year. So they want to be sure that you know that they are working with you. They've also voted to reinstitute impact fees. What impact fees can be used for is some of the capital expenditures. At the meeting, Commissioner Coleman was very clear with the sheriff that he'd hoped that the sheriff would forego any capital expenditures until after such time as we consider the impact fees, because those expenses to enhance services can be paid for through impact fees, and he felt comfortable that that was going to be approved and asked the sheriff to please hold off on any capital expenditures until after such time as those were instituted. So the board has worked with you, and they still today stand ready. In fact, Commissioner Kitchen's response to Chairman Dodd was, if necessary, he would be willing to call another joint meeting between our 2 bodies so that we could ferret this out. Of course, he understands the timing issue and that might not be available, but he wanted to make sure everyone knew that he was certainly willing to move forward with any more discussions. I was very disappointed to hear about the diet plate, as I think some of y'all were. The commissioners were presented a budget, as y'all were, by the sheriff to perform the services that you were purchasing from the sheriff. And there was no indication in that presentation or that budget that that was somehow an inefficient or less than optimal situation. So that's very disappointing to hear that. That now it's being termed as a diet plate and that the sheriff somehow needs money to enhance those services. And I'm sure the commissioners, when they hear that, will feel the same way that it seemed like y'all felt about that. With regard to the contract, Counsel of the Sheriff said that the first time that these 2 paragraphs that have been discussed so much today didn't occur until after the contract had been pretty much ferreted out between the school board and the sheriff, and I guess part of that is my fault. because I have been directed by my board to ensure that whenever we enter into a contract for services, that's what this is, you are contracting for services from the sheriff, that we make sure that there's fiscal responsibility in those contracts. And that's something that my board looks to me for at every turn. And that's simply what we try to do in this, is to make sure that there was fiscal responsibility on behalf of the sheriff. Also, we felt that it was only fair that since the school board and the county were paying additional monies for this contract, that if there was any grants from any source, that those would be brought into the contract and proportionately doled out, if you will. I don't see any reason why I would recommend to my board anything other than that. So as I go back to my board tomorrow, if it's considered by the board tomorrow, I don't see any reason why Mr. Oliver or I would recommend anything different to the board as far as the proportionality. Now, as far as the
One question, Ms. Lemon, but as far as what we kind of mentioned about the private donations, will that be a problem?
As part of the negotiations, I did send in, I think one of the drafts or one of the emails, Mr. Oliver and I felt that that would be something that our board would agree to for private individuals. I'm not sure about private foundations, because I'm not sure, that's a broad term, so I'm not exactly sure what the sheriff envisions in terms of private foundations, but private individuals like this person that is stated to want to put $10,000 forward, certainly we wouldn't have any objection to that. It's disheartening to hear that if the money has to be shared between the school board and the county, that then there would not be, no one would seek that money. That seems disappointing. I mean, just because the money's going to come back to the taxpayers of Citrus County, it would seem like I would still try to get a grant, or I would still try to pursue that donation, because it's all taxpayer dollars. I mean, I live here, I'm a taxpayer, I want financial accountability. I want my elected officials to ensure financial accountability when they enter into contracts. So I think we can present that to the board to do away with the private individuals. So with regard to the financial reporting or financial accountability, I know this has all been couched as an audit, and I'm kind of sorry that that language got out that way, because it's really not about an audit. It's really about financial accountability. I've talked to the financial people at the clerk's office, and I've talked to the clerk, who's our CFO for the county, and I've tried to speak with all of the financial people that I could speak with, and of course, Mr. Oliver is our accountant at the county. I've tried to talk with all of them and find the best way to report. And I've heard things like it would be financially irresponsible for the elected officials not to require financial accountability within your contracts. So I know this is being couched that it's a county issue, but it's really more than that. It's an issue with the elected officials and what the taxpayers expect from our elected officials in general. And so all we're asking the sheriff is, you've got a contract for X number of dollars, simply give us some reporting. And I've offered quarterly, I've offered an income and expense report, I've offered really anything. Just seeking something back from the sheriff. What can you agree with? What semi-annually, just give me something. And the last response before today was the sheriff won't agree to any of that. So now today we did get a different draft shortly before we got here, and he's talking about doing this for the next budget cycle, which would be 2019. Well, that's past the date of this contract, so that really doesn't give us any assurances for this this contract term, and who knows what y'all are going to do next time. I mean, we don't. I mean, this has been an arduous task. And dare I say, the attorney's fees that are being spent by the taxpayers on this is enormous. If this goes on next year the same way, who knows what y'all are going to do, but by then we won't need any financial reporting on this contract. So to put in a 2019 date, it's not helpful, because it won't be until next year. And let me tell you a little bit about the sheriff's budget, the sheriff's audit. So every year the clerk undergoes an audit through a contractor of all of the constitutionals, and I brought a copy of it with me today. This is the report that's generated. It's called the CAFR, and it includes all of the constitutional officers, whether it be the tax collector or the property appraiser. Nowhere in this very large document will you see any mention of any funding going to the SRO program. Now, we know that this program has been in place in Citrus County for many years. Sheriff Dawsey before and now our current sheriff. It's not even mentioned in here. So for the sheriff to say, I will do my normal audit, you're not going to get any information about this contract. Now, certainly we can try and segregate it somehow, and we can try and ask the auditors to do a special look on this, but why go through that and muddy the process that we already undergo, that the clerk's office already undergoes, and the sheriff undergoes on the CAFR? Just give us some reports quarterly. That's all we're asking. Quarterly reports, and perhaps the ability to do an audit at the end of the term, which in this case is a year. We agreed to change the language so that it would be only no more than once annually. It's only an annual contract, so that means once. So I think.
Okay, so let me
I've
ask you this
covered
question. I
everything.
mean, it sounds fair to ask, though, as far as the accounting clause that's in here now, this was not your wording, or this was your wording that is in this contract that we're seeing?
Partially.
Okay.
My wording relates to the quarterly detailed reports on the restricted accounts, because these SRO funds we're asking the sheriff to keep them in a segregated type fund.
But you wanted to keep it as of October 1 of 18, is that what you're saying? You said this doesn't cut it, the October 1, 19, or you
Correct.
think the county's going to agree to that?
I can't recommend, and I don't believe Mr. Oliver will recommend to the board that they accept if it doesn't start until October 1 of 19. Because we've got a whole
What if it
bunch.
says October 1 of 18? Is that acceptable? Would that be recommended to the county? If that's...
I believe so. And to the point, we still have 2 more budget hearings with the sheriff. The sheriff has submitted his budget once. The commissioners did not accept that budget and asked the sheriff to sharpen his pencil somewhat to make some changes to that. So there still will be ongoing budget submittals for this year. I know that they're saying that would cause them to do some work to change things around. I understand that, but in talking with the financial folks at the clerk's office, that the software that the sheriff has can do those types of things. That's just what I've been told. I personally don't work on the software.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, I read Ms. Lynn's paragraph 9 to you earlier. Which was more detailed than what's in the current paragraph.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Did the wording, did her wording use a date? Was there a date in there of October 1?
No, it did not, because it contemplated during the term of the contract, which is July 1 through
Okay.
June 3rd.
So,
Actually, the contract is July 1. I'm sorry.
okay. So, but do you think, as in kind of a little give and take here, instead of starting at the requirements July 1 of 2018, that the county, or that Mr. Oliver might agree to recommend it if this were to say October 1 of 2018 to go along with your budget year?
I think in an effort to try and bring this together, I think that I'm not getting any indication, so I think that we can recommend that to the board.
On the 3-month non-reporting requirement.
So a 3-month non-reporting. The first 3 months would be non-reporting.
Well, I mean, that sounds reasonable to me. Now,
Excuse me.
Mr. Oliver.
I got a phone a friend.
As long as we can get just some kind of report that says what's spent, I don't want, there are certain, apparently, there'll be certain startup costs, I don't know what they're gonna be, I just want them to be reflected so we know what the overall cost is.
Startup costs with what?
Well, I don't know, for example, we've not been privy to what's happening with the purchase of capital that maybe needed, like cars, equipment, radios, things like that. I don't know what's happening with that, and that could be spent within those first 3 months. And while, from our standpoint, that works very well, I just need some kind of statement that says this is what we spent for those first 3 months as it relates to that particular item.
I guess what I'm hearing then is that you still want the revenue and expense report. One would not have to be given until October.
It doesn't have to be in a separate fund, though.
Okay, but you still want the reporting from July 1 through October.
Yeah, just a report would be fine. Just put it in a separate fund after October 1st is fine.
Otherwise, you're missing that information, is what you're saying, and particularly with the startup costs.
Okay, yes, Ms. Harris.
Commissioners totally, the commissioners are totally clarifying everything, I understand. The school board's totally clarifying everything. So now we just need the third aspect for this agreement to work.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no,
And I'll just apologize to my board. I have not sent you a copy of this contract. This contract changed daily for weeks, going back and forth. And if you got a copy, I mean, I literally had to start numbering them and dating them so I knew which was the last one because of the minute changes that were going on, you know.
But Mr. Bradshaw, is that because the county and the school district had continual changes? I understand that Ms. Denise had provided the points that she says are kind of standard with the contract, with any contract, it sounds like you're doing with the Board of County Commission.
And going back to Mr. Batzel's comment, we had talked, a lot of the conversation that I had with Mr. Batzel up until, the county was always a party to the contract. There was a paragraph in there that said that the money that we paid would go to the county and be a flow through to the sheriff's office part that way. The majority of the negotiations up until a certain point were the nuts and bolts of the SRO program, you know, as far as when, where, how, you know, what was going on, how all that was going to work. And then when we had worked that out, I sent it back over to the county, and the county, you know, in which I'm glad, put in some proportionate share language and the accountability, which is I'm not opposed to at all.
And if I recall, the commissioners, that was their reasoning for having a three-party agreement, was to ensure some of those very factors. I believe that was asking for with regards to the additional funding sources.
As the county became involved in the mandates of the Senate bill, the county learned about the SRO program and the finances of the SRO program from years past. The county learned that there were different numbers being provided to the county and the school board in terms of what was in your contract, the school board's contract with the sheriff, and then what we were being told the sheriff was receiving for that contract. And that caused some of the commissioners to become want to ensure that there was a tri-party agreement. And when the sheriff came before the county commissioners, I believe it was on June 10th, he stated very precisely to some questions from Mr. Oliver about the finances, he said emphatically that there would be a tri-party agreement. I've gone back, I reviewed the video from that, and the commissioners required that. When he wanted the $87,000 increase in his budget, they said, we want a tri-party agreement, and the sheriff agreed to that at that time.
All right, are there other questions for Ms. Lynn? Thank you. I would like to say Chairman Ron Kitchen did send me an email advising that he did not have the contract and it would not be appropriate for him. I mean, he would be in the same boat we're in, but not have anything to reference. And also offered if we would need to have another meeting in conjunction with them, that he would be more than happy to facilitate that. And I don't think, I'm hoping we're not going to need to get there. Sounds like we've got some good things going here that you can take to the sheriff as far as this is what is a result of the meeting. And I'm not really sure, you know, how it's going to work with these two items, but you know, I think it's clear. What you've heard is that we're talking proportionate share, equitability with public dollars, and private individuals who were to donate money could be kept in its entirety by the organization receiving the funds or receiving the donation, and that the accounting process would be in this form, but it would be October 1 of 2018 and not of 2019. And that makes a lot of sense too, because like even Mr. Bradshaw said, this is out, I mean, Ms. Lynn said this is out of the purview of an annual contract. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. And so those are the two items. Now, Ms. Hemmel, is there anything else that you can think of that we need to hear back on, or Mr. Bradshaw? Okay.
Mr. Chair, would you mind, just so that when I go to him with a recommendation of language, I want to make sure that it's an accurate, you know, representation of what everyone is comfortable with. And so I just, you mind if I cover that with you real quickly?
No,
and
that's
make sure
fine.
we're on the same page? Okay. All right, so as far as that paragraph 4D, the proportionate share language goes.
Well, let's get to it on our contracts.
Sure, sure.
It's page,
I would suggest putting the prior language. Or restrict.
what page is that on?
It is on, well, the contract I gave you is stricken,
It's
yeah.
stricken.
That's what I was just
Put
gonna
the old
say.
language back in.
Somebody has to make a motion then.
Well, so
Put the
from,
old language back in saying excluding private donations.
well, and I think, just to be very
Private
honest with
donations from
you,
individuals.
yeah, and I want, this is more of a question for Denise, but I think, or Ms. Lynn, I just want to make sure that this private grant type thing, I know that's in the back of the minds, or the back of the mind of the sheriff. And so one thing that we had previously discussed potentially was from other public funds or other sources of public funds. Is that acceptable or is that not acceptable? I mean, I'm open, I understand your concern.
We agree, I think I can present to the county that we agree to not proportionately share private individual donations.
We do share public.
Yes, ma'am.
And that would go along with what Ms. Bryant said. And I can go with that.
Excluding, yeah, from.
Excluding private individual donations.
Senate Bill 7026 or any other public source, I guess you could say, and exclude private individual donations.
Okay, so, or any other public source. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, that's what I'll
Is
recommend.
that what,
Wait, no, I think you kind of flipped that one.
No, well,
Because it said, the language said from Senate Bill 7026 or from any other source. And then excluding individual private donations. I guess we'd leave it like that.
Individuals.
Individual private donations.
okay, and I know the sheriff's gonna have a question about this because that slams the door on private, on any party, including the school board. You, as a board or with staff, cannot go apply for a grant that you will apply the money in a stated way that does not also include the fact that you're gonna give 60% of it to the county.
with regards to the SRO program? With regards to the SRO program, that doesn't mean that any other funding, even including hardening, would necessarily apply to that. Unless you're saying that that's what your interpretation of that is.
Well, I mean, with the grant process, I mean, the grant is out there on the street for a specific purpose, or you apply with stated.
Well, there's going to be grants right now that the state's going to be providing for hardening. We all are aware of those. They won't be applying to this contract.
That's not a school resource officer.
So, I mean, those wouldn't, so I think, at least I feel comfortable that our legal has looked at that and said, yeah, that's not going to be part of that. So is there something else that we're missing that you're thinking would somehow come along? Because, I mean, because that's why I'm saying, we're listening.
If we wanted to apply for an additional grant, the money's coming to the county and back to the school board, we'd give it to the county on maybe joining in on the grant, figure out how to do it.
We need to.
Yeah.
Okay, understood.
We do that all the time when it comes to sidewalks and other factors all the time where the county works with us. And sometimes a lot of times the money flows at times through the county when it comes to those projects. We work with them on that type of thing.
And a lot of times, the grant requires the support of the loan agency, and they have to sign off on
This
the
deals
grant.
with boots on the ground, the other deals with doors, fences, how we harden the school to prevent people from getting.
Okay.
If we're talking about things of capital hardware for protection hardware, personal protection or other things, which I think that there was some references that the sheriff had hoped for federal monies regarding that, that would still become a proportional share then.
Right, which I understand. I'm with you. So part of the impetus behind some of these grants, as the sheriff understands it, is that it's known throughout the state that in embarking on this heightened level of security, these sheriffs have absorbed the costs associated with having to also deal with Baker Acts and arrests and the administrative overhead associated with running a bigger, more capital expenditures in.
So we're not talking something outside.
No. So we're not. So a grant that was provided for that purpose for a sheriff to apply for will not come to Citrus County. That's the
If they're gonna involve Baker Act facilities, I think they're gonna be dealing with the county facility and anything of that nature.
No, I'm sorry, I should have explained better. So when an SRO is sitting at his school and an incident occurs, and there's a Baker Act, or an arrest on campus, or he needs to be testifying, or doing something else that is incumbent upon being a deputy, there's coverage needed for that, and there are other costs that are absorbed by the sheriff right
I
now.
don't think those are other costs that are absorbed. He told us that that's the whole reason for when to have the 3 supervisors available was so that when a deputy had to Baker Act a student and take them, or had to go testify, or was ill and was out, that he had the backup coverage to do it. That's why it's in the contract that they are full-time SRO supervisors, was for that particular purpose. Those costs have already been factored into his budget when he presented it to us.
Okay, so the grants for those purposes would be foreclosed.
We would recoup the monies that we've already paid. We're paying for those now.
You can see our level of frustration on what has been said and we thought agreed to and still hasn't been agreed to.
Understood. Okay, and that's why I just want to be very clear on what I'm taking to him right now. Okay. Okay, so as to paragraph 9, which is the, we'll call it the accounting paragraph. If the sheriff agrees to provide, and let me explain, we're not trying to not provide the necessary reports until it's in a department or cost center. Multiple members of staff are going to go into the overall budget and have to pick out and draw out. It's a time intensive process. Okay, but they're going to do this, or if the sheriff will agree with what I'm presenting with. So these quarterly revenue and expense reports, if we can provide those beginning October 2018, then the rest of the revision is acceptable. And I'm particularly asking about the once annual audit is no longer part of the process. I mean, we're going to provide quarterly revenue and expense reports for all money coming in and out. So I don't know how much more detail is expected of an annual audit over and above what the sheriff already undergoes per statute annually, but I know that
We've talked about something too, and I just feel the need to address that. We've talked about that the sheriff has what you've talked about, that the legislature already has set a criteria for that. We would also argue that, like you said, Parkland changed a lot of things. It changed how much monies are now being spent for the school resource officer program, dramatically. We're talking about 3 and 4 times the costs that we had prior to that. I think the legislature may even be addressing that in the future. They're going to have to address a lot of issues when it comes to the SRO program. In the meantime, local governments are responsible to the taxpayers. We all have to be able to say to our constituents, where is the money going and what was spent for that? So while the legislature hasn't addressed that yet, they haven't addressed a lot of things that we are now having to deal with as a result of Parkland, and you've said that understandably. So I think we're struggling to say, we understand what the county's saying. I can tell you this board has struggled with trying to make sure we understand the costs. Because keep in mind, before all of this went down, we just took the monies that we got from the state and we just wrote a contract to the full amount of the funding that we had. And that was it. The rest, the sheriff's department found a way to meet the rest of the needs for the students in their budget. So the accounting wasn't entirely necessary because we gave all of it. Now what you're saying is we're having to not just give all of it, but we're also having to now look at how it impacts other programs, because we've got to fund it in addition to the funding that we receive. And that really does change the entire mechanism. The county is saying the same thing. And I'm appreciative that this has at least brought an awareness to the county of the program, beyond that it was a successful program, but also the cost of it. We all need to make sure we do recognize that while we want to keep the best system in the country, one that was awarded in 2005 from the President of the United States as one of the examples of SR programs in the nation, We want to continue that, but that also means we're going to have accountability and transparency.
Okay, so I think, oh, go ahead, yes, absolutely.
The way that I would recommend to my board the language is the last language, Wes, that was drafted before today's strike through, but just add a date qualifier in there. And if you look at it, asking for quarterly reports, the first quarter would be October. So that actually is consistent with what we had been talking about. So I don't know if you have the language there, Wes, that you could. Thank you.
Let me just read it just to make sure.
You're talking soft.
Is that unusual?
I've trained him well.
Does the parties agree the funds paid pursuant to this agreement are restricted for the payment of expenses related to the SRO program? And the parties agree the sheriff will provide detailed quarterly revenue and expense reports and reserve balance reports for the funds pursuant to this agreement to the county and the school district. Just say starting October, beginning October 1, 2018. These reports will encompass the restricted funds paid pursuant to this agreement. This provision allows for the SRO funds to be audited, but in no event shall such audit occur more frequently than once per year.
That's good, and I just wanted to stress that I tried so hard to make sure that we were only talking about the SRO funds, the restricted funds, and having nothing to do with the sheriff's law enforcement budget, because we agree we don't want a duplication of those audits. We just want the SRO money. Thank you, guys.
And I'd like to address something about reports. I don't think that we want to put any burden on the sheriff's office. However, all I need to do in the morning is make our finance officer tell her I need a line item or a new cost center, and since it's a local cost center, the line item, she can do it pretty quickly. So, now, it's a DOE line item, something different, but if we do it with our local budget, it's easy as possible.
Okay, now, Mr. Batson, before you call the sheriff, I have this is our first time seeing this too, you know, and I just want to make sure I'm clear on some things.
Yes, sir.
So with the 2.5 million, the whole lease agreement on the cars is out the window. I mean, that's not happening, is that right? We're back to the full
Yes,
purchase
sir.
price?
As and again, that number has never become an issue since I've been working on it. That has remained the same. So I was not aware this was an issue. However, I believe that budget, and that was based on the fact that it was saving every other parties, the county and the school board, in year one, because it brings down the cost. That is the overall cost based on leasing vehicles.
Leasing the vehicles
Leasing the
for the
vehicles.
nine, I believe.
Yes. Now, we've had this discussion, I'll tell you, Mr. Bradshaw, Ms. Lynn and I, this is a good example. If the sheriff got his hands on a private, whether it's a donation or a private grant, one of the places he would recommend placing it would be to purchase those vehicles, because you know, that costs everyone less over the long term to own a vehicle than it does to lease it year over year over year if it's going to be a long-term partnership. However, he did that in an effort to bring down everyone's cost year one and reduce capital expenditures while the county examined impact fees, et cetera. So long-term, it's a better, you know, planning tool to purchase vehicles. So I just mentioned that. But.
Okay, and my next question is, on the Safety and Security Committee, which we all have committee assignments in school board members, that's one of my committee assignments, there was a discussion about coverage. Now, Exhibit A handles those schools that are going to have full-time SROs. So even at, for instance, the Crest School with Cucci Technical College, there will be a full-time school resource officer on those campuses. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're not going to have a position there that is filled by a full-time school resource officer.
Yes, sir. Okay. That's what the contract requires, and Major Leonhardt's telling you that's going to happen.
Okay.
Chairman Dodd, though, the only question that I've wondered with that is we are under the impression that there is going to be an added school at that location. And so my concern is that does that just get a slash WT, with LaCreechie Technical College slash?
That location's changed. Pace is gonna relocate, well, not relocate, we're gonna locate at, Micro.
So then as
So we
far as
currently have
21, can that be a slash
That's
Renaissance
at the
slash?
school facility, so they're.
And we were gonna work with the sheriff's office because we've got one full-time at Renaissance and not to need to add another one because they're pretty busy.
But I just want to make sure that we're not, the intention is that we will have the coverage there and it's in this contract and it's not going to be something that come January, we have a new cost that's going to be associated
Because
with
that
that.
is one facility
Yeah,
at Renaissance.
No, I agree with that. But I wanted to make sure that that's understood. Because that's really, someone will say that that's 23rd school.
yeah, are we good to put Renaissance Center campus, or what would cover that, so we don't?
I mean, that would be fine with me. You say Renaissance, that's an excellent.
So is Pace gonna be new now onto this contract?
Well, what we're thinking, Pace is gonna locate at the Renaissance,
Okay,
okay, where Micro School was.
right.
And we were gonna share the Renaissance SRO with Micro School anyway, so,
Same campus.
we could maybe change that to Renaissance campus.
Right.
Would you be good with that?
Well, it's not on here and it wasn't in my decision making on, when I only have 22 and I got 25 officers. So, I mean, I'm sure we could work something out there. If you're talking about campuses though, you could say the Canto campus. That's a middle, elementary and a high. So I don't think we want to get cute here, but we can make things work as long as we can work this out.
Center could mean campus, it's on
I mean,
center,
you
and it's
can-
all one building.
If you all wanted to put Renaissance / Pace Center, I'm good with that too, I don't, it doesn't
Right.
matter.
Well,
just can't
I didn't
see us
think that
having-
I thought Pace went away. That was my last conversations with people and that it wasn't
Pace
gonna.
has that's never been a conversation that's gone away. Micro school, that may have been something that you thought of, because micro school's going away.
And they won't open until January.
And this was what was gonna go over here at
Yes.
WTC, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So that's not gonna happen over here.
All right, well, yeah, I just misunderstanding that, because I thought it was something that wasn't gonna happen.
So if it was going to be part of WTC's though, the security plan, then it should be the same coverage if it's at the Renaissance Center.
Big campuses, big complexes, we figure something out. And, you talked about, and I don't use the word diet, whatever, I just look at coverage. I know what I gotta do. I know what schools I gotta cover, I know how many people I need, I know what type of, coverage officers I'm gonna need if I got a guy sick, got a guy taking somebody, Baker acting and knowing what an arrest's gonna take, an injury to a guy, needs shoulder surgery, I know he's gonna be out long-term, I know, those things really come into place. So I'm not gonna say diet, but I am gonna say the coverage that I'm providing right now and the numbers that I have are very minimal. This doesn't provide me with a lot of additionals, or any additionals, truly, besides my supervision, to go in and cover for a guy. And I would hate to have a guy go out and have to have some type of surgery, and now I'm using my supervisor in a school thing for long periods of time. This is not doing the supervision roles. So, just to bring that up, and so I just wanted to address that with the diet thing. But
So you are saying,
You created the diet?
I might need to go on a diet.
Let me ask, what are the supervisors doing when they're not covering?
Supervisor. And doing
But where?
supervision.
What?
roles.
What are
I
they
mean,
doing?
they have uses of force to review, they have reports to review, they have evidentiary things to go over with their people. What a true super law enforcement supervisor does, and SRO supervisors, much like my road supervisors, they're doing everything, daily responsibilities that they truly have, as long as they're administrative duties. They're gonna have meetings with me, we're gonna be discussing some strategies, maybe some intel that's come in. I mean, there's a lot to do for a supervisor.
And where are they? Where are they headquartered?
But our current supervisors, SROs right now, are in the school
No, the
system,
three that'll be the supervisors, where will they be housed?
within the school systems.
Sort of moving around or checking
Ms.
people
Powers,
as they go?
they'll all be given an office.
But they all have an
At one
office.
of our facilities.
So we're trying to work through those semantics at the time period.
So are we in agreement to say Renaissance / Pace Center?
For the time being, yes.
I just wrote it online.
I mean, the good thing about funding 3 supervisors as well is that, that could be a second officer on campus. And I know, Ms. Himmel, I think that's been a discussion, as far as you're telling us they're gonna have an office on campus, so. So that'll be a good thing for us. Okay, so before we recess, are there any other questions for Major Linhart or Mr. Batzel as far as from the sheriff's? Yes, Ms.
I
Harris.
just want to make sure that my expectations are met. We're gonna send you to check with the sheriff about these changes to the contract. Can we expect a signature today to go to that county tomorrow and we're done with this?
I mean, I think that would be our hope. To be honest with you, am most concerned about the audit piece. He's already agreeing to provide quarterly revenue and expense reports and to budget it as a cost center next year and do all that stuff. And I'm not speaking from Mike's level of concern. I just know my sheriff
And again, I go back to the time frame. We've been doing this for months and now we're down to 1 week. At this time, school is gonna be dismissed a week from now. And there's gonna be 15,000 students out on the street. So
he's gonna
we're
be
charged, we got the mandate. And so we have to make a very serious decision today, whether we're going to negotiate a successful contract with the sheriff, or we have to look to our other resources and start our own police department.
I think we have to ask our staff what they're needing for
Yeah.
us to do before we leave here today.
Oh, yeah, I want this really settled today. We need to make a decision on where this board needs to go to make sure that we've got people protecting our kids on Monday. And we can either do it the way we've been doing it since 1984, 85, or leave us with no choice, then we've got to do it our way.
And I do have some ideas for us if the sheriff's not going to agree. But we'll wait to discuss those matters. I think we can get this done.
I just
think
don't
the
want,
sheriff
I
is-
don't want to be back here next Monday with no, and I don't want to pay $100,000 for coverage.
Right. Mr. Bradshaw, is there anything else we need to do before we recess the meeting?
Waiting on Mr. Batson.
All right.
Okay, Mr. Bassel, how long do you think would be?
It's going to matter how quickly I can get him. Major Linhart now.
So we'll look, are we talking about 15 minutes, you want to meet at 3 o'clock?
Sounds good. I'm going to try to underpromise and overdeliver.
All right, we're going to recess this meeting until 3 o'clock.